We are here at the Brewster Ladies Library. It is November 18th, 2014. See, I've been here for a while. And we're meeting with Katie Gibbs. And Katie, tell me something about, very briefly, when you came to Brewster, where your parents came from. I don't want a long family history, but give me some context.
Okay, my father came from New Bedford. My mother came from Baltimore, Maryland. And they married and I had me in 1938. My father was a painter and my mother wrote. So there was an awful lot. Dad lived in Harwich on Bank Street and had an antique shop in the early days. So they lived in North Dartmouth on a farm during the war. But then Dad was always connected with Provincetown, so they found a house in Brewster, which was the Elijah Cobb House, in 1944, and bought it from a family by the name of Duvenick, who lived in California. When we bought the house, there was no electricity, there was no water, there was no heat. There were snakes in the house, and there were huge amounts of plaster that had fallen down. So my father spent the first year, all winter, putting in a heating system, which was difficult because it was during the war. And finally we moved in. We lived there in 1945. We were sort of camping out and they were still working on the house. But I moved there as a child and started school in Brewster in 1946, and I was in the 3rd grade. So there were probably 8 children in my grade. At that time, the Brewster School had 2 classes in one room.
Was every grade double?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that was sort of fun, because if you got finished with your work, you could sit there and listen to the grade above you. So when you got to the grade above you, you knew some of it, sort of. Anyway, let's see. We had a wonderful teacher by the name of Miss Hollingsworth, and I think it probably was her first year of teaching. She was a wonderful. We had things like aquariums, and she's sort of. She was a good teacher, but she was very dedicated. I think all of the teachers were dedicated at that time.
You said there were only 8 people in the 3rd grade?
Yes.
But your whole classroom would have had
probably 16.
Maybe twice that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this house, because I'm fascinated. I understand the snakes. Mm-hmm. I understand the no electricity, no water.
No water.
Was there a pump in the kitchen?
I don't remember.
No. Was there a well?
There was a well, but there was an artesian well, but we redid it.
Okay.
I remember a man coming in with his piece of stick.
With a dowser?
Yeah. And they found an artesian well.
Oh my goodness.
Right next to the house, so that was wonderful.
So then they put in real water from the well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what else do you want to know?
Well, it sounds like the house was in really rough condition in many ways.
It had been vacant, I'm not sure how long.
Yeah.
And I have somewhere, which I will find, all of the writings back and forth from my mother and dad to the Dubenicks about buying the house, and which should be fun, to have.
Yeah.
We bought the house in 23 acres for $10,000. But then, of course, we put another 10 or 15 into it.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's not as it is today. There was an L, or actually, it's supposed to be a house that was moved on to
The L that was just recently taken off. or fairly recent? That was, okay.
This was, it went down the side of the house, and then there was a carriage shed
Oh,
attached to it.
yeah.
And the carriage shed was where my father had his studio.
So was the house comfortable by the time you moved into it?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were still, I don't think we ever stopped, doing things. But oh yeah, it was great. It was a wonderful house to grow up in.
Now, and there was a studio perhaps that was through the woods near the beach? No, there wasn't a little house out?
There was a house right on the beach.
Okay.
That had been a duck blind on the pond, and we floated it across the pond, dragged it up the hill, and put it on our bluff. And it was great because we'd go down, for picnics, just the whole family, like 4th of July, and the kids would, play on the beach, and we'd have salmon and peas.
Of course.
We did that fairly often. We'd go to the beach and have dinner. There was a bed there that every once in a while, we'd sort of camp out. Unfortunately, over the years, the Little Red Shack became infamous because everybody else used it too, which it was sort of a love nest, shall we say. And even
Are you talking about kids, or are you talking about anyone in the community?
Mostly teenagers,
Yeah.
college kids.
It sounds
But
like
I've met so many people, and my daughter has met so many people who say, "Oh, I dated my husband in that Little Red Shack." So it's sort of fun.
Well, I was going to ask you if this was a party place just for the family, or if you and your friends used it.
No,
but
I never. I may have used it once, but no. This was in later years.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
After my father died, probably in the 60s, 70s.
Okay.
Probably 70s, 80s. Excuse me.
So it was just a lonesome, convenient little
Beautiful.
house.
It was beautiful because it was facing towards Provincetown, and you got wonderful sunsets there. And my father did a lot of paintings with sunsets and the beach. So I have them in a lot of them in my house, and it's very pleasant to.
So did he sometimes use this as a temporary
he'd
studio?
go down.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
draw or something, but he never
Right.
painted.
When you were growing up, was the Elijah Cobb House the icon that it became later? Did you realize you were?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so
Oh,
people
yeah.
knew that it was a well-known house.
sure.
Yeah.
And Dad closed. When we bought the house, you could get into the widow's walk, which because the roof needed redoing, he closed it because he thought maybe I'd get up there, and where the kids would get
Sure.
up there. So I would imagine, I haven't been up in the attic since I moved back, but I would imagine there should be a place where they covered it over that you could just open it up.
Yeah.
I mean, when my mother died and I moved back into the house, for some reason the Board of Trade put the house on a map
Oh.
of old houses, and I continually had people coming in and saying, "Are you still open?" And I'd be cooking dinner. But that sort of went away.
Yeah.
But always people would take pictures of the front of the house. It was, because it was an
Yes.
important house.
Right. Well, let's go back to school.
Okay.
How many grades were in there? You're talking
Two grades in a classroom.
Okay, and how high up did the grades go?
8th
Goes up to
grade,
8.
and we graduated. And my class was the first class that graduated. Now, when I speak about the elementary school, I mean what is now used as the town
The
hall.
town hall, right.
And our class was the first class that graduated from that building. They had added on an auditorium. All the other classes had been graduating from the town hall, the old town hall.
Sure.
There was upstairs, there was a stage, and that's where they put on plays. That summer group, and I believe it was the Argos.
Who
Very
started there.
early.
Well,
They were-
tell me about the my recollection is the auditorium, when that was a school, was built in the basement, was down below.
Yeah, it was.
So they added the basement?
I don't remember. You walk in the back, you walk up the stairs, you go down, and that was the new auditorium.
All right.
To the right was the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And I believe they must have added that one,
Okay.
because I don't remember ever going, it wasn't there.
Because the building is built on a hill. It does
Yeah.
slope down and back, so they
Mhm.
just,
Yeah,
huh.
yeah.
So this auditorium, was it used for plays, performances? Was it
I don't know. We were the first to graduate, and then I
That's
went on to
right.
high school, you see,
Sure.
so you didn't realize, I
You
think
weren't
it was
there.
probably used for meetings.
Yeah.
At the town always had their, meeting per, town meeting.
Right.
And that was always in the old
Sure.
town hall. And it was wonderful because it was on a Saturday, and Mr. Crowley made chowder, and everybody ate lunch there, and it was just wonderful. Everybody had a good time. Then, of course, they changed it to an evening.
What did they do with children? Was there a place for children to stay while parents were at town meeting?
No, but you just stayed home. You didn't go.
Okay.
I don't know if older children take care of the
Of
younger
course.
children, or the wife didn't go,
Yeah,
or
right.
whoever. But
When you were in school, in the elementary school here,
Mhm.
were all the classes about that size?
yes,
There weren't large classes and small classes, and that it was,
well, you'd have some classes that were larger.
yeah.
But I remember it being 2 grades to 1 classroom, and that one teacher taught 2 grades.
Yeah. Tell me the names of some of the other teachers.
Mrs. Daly,
Dot Daly.
yeah.
All right.
Mrs. Hoover, who was actually Polly Newcomb
Okay.
from the other side in West Brewster. She was married to an officer in the Army, I think, and so she was here teaching until he came back. I don't know where he was. Mrs. Dunn, who was from Dennis, her husband was a principal, and she was Bessie Dryerhead. She was wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
And everybody that was in that class would, if I mentioned this to them, they'd answer me like, 2 L's, 2 words, 2 L's, 2 words, all right, all right, all right. And there were 2 or 3 other ones that I have never forgotten, ever. Let's see, Mrs. Callahan was a teacher,
Yeah.
and
These women must have been young
Very
teachers
young.
at the time, because they were there a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, and Mrs. Laporte.
Yeah.
She was there. She was a good teacher too. In fact, I saw Mrs. Callahan and Mrs. Laporte, although she's been married,
Yeah.
and I don't remember her married name, but I saw them probably 3 or 4 years ago having lunch. It was so fun.
We're hoping to talk to them, or at
Oh,
least to
really? Oh,
Mrs.
yeah.
Laporte.
And Ozzie Burst, of course, was the principal.
He was there a long time,
Yes,
wasn't he?
for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And he was there, I had him for 5 years, 3rd to the 8th. I
Yeah.
don't remember when he left.
By the time you're in 8th grade, you're doing more complicated work. Did every teacher teach every subject, or did teachers have specialties?
At the 8th grade, they finally, for instance, had a history teacher. Ozzie Burst taught us history, I think. There was another young man who I don't remember his name, but he took care of the playing, sports, but he also taught us something. And then Mrs. John was the rest of the teaching.
Was there a cafeteria? Did you go home?
Yeah.
Did you bring your
No.
lunch?
We had a wonderful cafeteria right downstairs. And there were ladies from the town, and I can see them, but I cannot remember their names, but they would cook for us, and it was wonderful, wonderful food, It's probably 10 cents or 15 cents to do that.
So it was real hot meals. It wasn't sandwiches or...
Oh, no. No, we had, let's see. I can't think of the name of it, and I still like it. Scotch hamburger on mashed potatoes and beans. Very good.
Sounds very healthy.
We had, meat and potatoes and a vegetable and a dessert every day, and milk.
So then when you went home at night, did you have another dinner?
Oh, sure.
All
We
right.
ate at 12. Oh, yes.
What did you play for games? Were there recess times?
Recess times, yes. We played baseball, jacks. We were very into jacks. Let's see, the boys played we all played baseball, but not together. Swings, they had swings, we would play that. We'd play with dolls, we'd play, all this. And then I was trying to get this in, so I'm going to be changing the subject a little bit.
All right.
I was thinking about the activities that we did in Brewster when we were home during.
Sure.
In the summer, we just looked forward to the summer so much because all the summer people were coming. And I had a best friend who lived right up next to the Brewster store. So she and I we all bicycled all the time, all over town. And I can remember I would be playing at this girl's house, and it was right across from the telephone office. So if Mother called Mrs. Tinkham, she'd yell out the door, "Katie, it's time to go home for dinner." But everybody, it was wonderful to grow up in Brewster because everybody knew you, and you really, nobody really could get lost. If anything happened in the town, like a fire, everyone pitched in with clothing and food and place to live. It was a nice town at that time.
What was the name of your best friend?
I can't remember.
So that's silly.
Her first name was Phyllis, but I think she's gone. I don't think we've seen, I haven't seen her in years. The church, the Baptist Church, was very, very busy with the younger people. There was a minister by the name of Mr. Bentley, who was wonderful. He had a youth group. Almost all the children in this area went with it, whatever they were. And we had dinner. They had dinners that they made money for, and we, as the older children, I must have been maybe 13, and we would all serve the dinners. When I can remember, I believe the lady's name was Miss Abbott, and she had a black rolled hat. And I came out of the kitchen. It was like chicken and something and peas, and I rolled a pea. Somehow my plate just slanted, and the pea went into Miss Abbott's hat. But I didn't dare say anything, so I guess Miss Abbott eventually found the hat, found the pea. I mean, oh my God, it was awful. And we had dances in the town hall. Downstairs.
Were these year-round or just summer?
No, year-round.
Year-round, like once a week or something?
No, it wasn't that often, but we do square dancing. Upstairs, some of the classes before mine graduated from there. Let's see, we went to the movies in Orleans. A parent would take us. Well, they pick up people along the way so that the tires are sort of like this. But we all went for 10 cents. We were in the chorus at the Baptist Church, and we went roller skating in the 7th and 8th grade in Hyannis.
Oh, there was a roller rink.
And again, everybody
that was
went
through
in
the
one
church?
car.
That was through the church?
No,
No, that was...
They're just parents.
Yeah.
So,
Young people today say that there's nothing to do in Brewster.
well, there really wasn't much to do when I grew up, but we made things to do because we didn't have television. The library was very important to me because I was near it and I came up, and Mrs. Ellis was the
Yes.
librarian, and this was the children's room. I have a feeling that they may have moved a wall in the front, in that next room,
They didn't move a wall, they just opened it up.
because it seemed so small. I can't
I
imagine
know.
that she was there with a desk and all the books. I don't know. But anyway, of course I was younger.
It all looks larger.
Yeah. There are a lot of foster children in the town. A lady by the name of Miss Parker, who lived up the street next to the old town hall, had probably 4 or 5 kids. And then Fred and Ginny Hooper, who lived across the street, had 2 children.
Now, is that the Mrs. Hooper who was the school teacher?
No.
Different
No.
Mrs. Hooper.
Fred
Okay.
Hooper was on the fire department for years and years and years, and he was the deputy chief.
Okay.
And he also worked in the Nickerson
Nickerson Park.
Park. So,
They did foster children from Boston?
yes.
Now, was this for the summer or to come and live
year
for
round.
years?
They went to school with us.
Okay.
And it was great because it made a lot more kids right in the middle of town. So after school, we'd go up, and I don't know how the Hoopers stood it, but we'd either play in the house or we'd play baseball. And then the Jorgensens lived right next door. So John could play with us. Not as much. I think he worked in the store for his dad. But he did play with us. So there were quite a few kids who, from different grades, different ages, but we all played together.
Tell me again where this Hooper house was, which house it was?
It's the house directly behind
Ken's store.
Ken's Market.
So
Which-
where did the Jorgensens live?
They lived in the White House.
On the corner. Now, you said John Jorgensen. I remember Ken Jorgensen. Who had Kens.
Ken Jorgensen was John Jorgensen's father.
Okay, so it was just called Ken's after him. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it was, okay. So John is about your age.
He's about my age. He passed away with cancer.
Right.
And then they had a son, and he died recently.
He had 3 sons,
Yeah.
and 2 of them died recently. Yeah.
So obviously cancer was in the family.
Yeah. Well, now I'm curious. Where did you go grocery shopping?
We'd go to Ken's Market, but usually like once every 2 weeks. And you didn't just get a few little things, you got the whole car full. We'd go to Orleans.
Yeah.
They had an A&P in Orleans. And,
They had Ellis's.
yeah, I don't remember we ever shopped at Ellis's. I did in later years.
Right. So you go to the A&P to fill up the car, and you go to Ken's to do fill-ins.
Yeah, and then my father also, having been in Harwich for so long, he went to Toby's. He knew they had grown up
Right.
together, so that's where he got his meat.
Did your life change when you got to high school?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't see, you saw the other children from town at school. You went to school and you came home. There were things at school, but it was a little difficult to get there. So I never was in sports. They did a couple of talent, I don't mean that, shows where they showed off clothes, and I was in that. They had dances. They had, what a usual,
So you went to the Orleans High School.
Mm-hmm.
Did kids at that time have a choice of going to
No.
DY? It was only Orleans.
Mm-hmm. And then I went away to school, my junior
right.
and senior year.
I see.
So
And did the Orleans High School draw from several towns at
yes,
that time? Did it go-
Brewster, Orleans, and East End.
Okay.
There were no technical schools.
Right.
Although they did have a technical department in the high school.
I know you went away to school for those last 2 years, but did most those kids finish high school?
Yes.
Okay, even if they weren't going to go on?
Oh, there were some kids that dropped out.
Sure.
But a lot of them would drop out and go into the service. Pregnancy was not that frequent. There was one girl that got pregnant, and she had to drop out of school.
Yeah.
So it was very much frowned upon, which is too bad, because they should have been able to, do something for the parent.
Well, let's. I'm sure you have more things to say. Do you want to bring up something right now before I try
No.
to move on a little bit?
No, I'll go with you.
You know what I want to know? Was the weather different then?
Oh, it seemed to be. It was, the one thing I remember living here, I couldn't get on the bus in front of my house. I had to walk up to Main Street. And I either got it at Donald Owen's or I got it right here at the Manse. But on foggy days, it was so quiet, and you could hear the foghorns from Chatham. It was just wonderful. Of course, you never hear that anymore. They just whoo, just like that, and just dead silence. And I can remember, it sounded so lonely, but it was really beautiful, And but basically, I guess it was probably the same as it is here. We had some big snowstorms, and you'd be in the house for 2 or 3 days, but that wasn't too bad. So no school, which was great.
So who was the police?
Mr.
Tell me-
McGlashan was the policeman,
Yes.
and he was the only policeman.
Right.
And I remember him as being very nice. And he'd drive up and down and around and around. Then Saban Lord took over. And I was frightened of him.
Oh.
And he looked very, stiff, like a real policeman. And I was friendly with the son, Saban, but I really never had too much to do with Mr. Lord.
Okay. And the fire department?
The fire department was all volunteer. Honestly, I don't remember who was on the fire department at that time.
I know what I wanted to ask you. Can you tell me the names of your school class?
Mates,
Yep.
Louisa Chase, me, Lorraine Robbins, Becky. I know the guys as well as I.
That's all right.
I'm pretty much, if you gave me enough time, if you gave me a half an hour.
All right, if it comes back to you. I did want to talk a little bit about your parents and their friends, because I think it's an interesting time in Brewster and an interesting group of people. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your father's artistic history?
All right. My father was born in New Bedford. He ran away when he was 18 and went to Bermuda. He'd saved enough money to go to Bermuda, and he stayed there probably 6 or 8 months and painted there. He came back, and my great-grandmother sent him to France, and he stayed over there for 2 years and met a lot of people that eventually ended up here in Brewster. He came home, then he went back for another couple of years, and then he came back and had lived in Harwich and was very involved with the Provincetown Art Association.
Okay. He and Tom Bouchard were friends. Was it Tom who brought him to Brewster?
No,
No.
my father brought Tom to Brewster.
Oh, I see.
He called Tom and said, "I found a barn for you." And Tom came up, and of course they bought and it was quite a bit of land, because I know it's gone to the Natural History Museum,
Yeah,
I think,
something.
or
So I know I've seen your father's paintings in the Cape Museum.
Mhm.
Is he collected in other places? Do you know?
He was at the De Cordoba Museum in the permanent collection. He's in Andover, Massachusetts. He was at the the museum in Boston, Boston Fine Arts.
Yeah.
And but I don't know if they still have his
Yeah.
work. And of course, he had a one-man show in Baltimore. He was shown
Yeah.
all around the country, but when art goes up and down,
Yes.
and right now, or before he died, he was not showing very much.
His things look to me, and I am not in any way an art expert, they look very much of the time. They have the colors and the style of, which may not be the style of today, and maybe again in years, who knows?
It was abstract,
Yeah.
and he was not. For instance, you had Hoffman in Provincetown, and that was not abstract. And then groups of artists came in, and they sort of took over the Provincetown Art Association. But so it goes.
Yeah. There's a very nice collage at the museum here.
On the door, on a piece of wood.
Yeah. I love that.
But the problem, it bothers me so much because it's half gone.
Oh.
It's just, we had it over the fireplace at the house, and there were pieces of china that Dad put on, and there were a couple of, we're not mentioning Betty Lane by the,
Yeah.
and there were scissors and things he had found on the beach, and he put paint, and then he put the door together, or it was together, but then he added all the stuff, and I gave it to the museum because I thought, well, I'm moving here, there, and everywhere, and it's gonna get destroyed. Well, it's unfortunately, there is nothing really left. I keep thinking I should go and fix it, but I don't think I don't know if they'd let me do that.
Well, the little bit I saw, I liked.
It was great, yeah.
Who else was in this? It was a group of artists, but it was also a social group, wasn't it?
Yeah. John and Christy Hay, Betty Lane, and her husband. He worked at BU in film. George Fedorov, Tom Bouchard.
Slacks.
The Slacks, no, that Slacks, not with my family, because he was he was a portrait painter, and Dad just couldn't quite take that. So, I mean, they were just different people.
Mm-hmm.
He tended to travel more with the Chatham crowd.
Ah, okay.
Let's see, who else? A guy by the name of Whitey Lutz, and he was married to a Richardson. from Boston.
Was Conrad Aiken part of this group, or was he
No,
unto himself?
he was pretty much unto himself, but the reason John Hay came to Brewster was because of Conrad.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Theodore Enslin, who just passed away in Maine. He was a poet. His 2 children still live on the Cape. I'm trying to think, I'm sure I've left somebody out.
Did you get the sense, now I know these questions are somewhat unfair because you were the child and they were
Mhm.
the adults, but did you get the idea that there was, an artistic mix of ideas at this, or was it just a group of people who had similar interests and were socially friends?
Well, there tended to be great conversations about painting and, who was, writing, because my mother wrote.
That's right.
A lot of people would come in as they were coming into New York or into P-Town.
Now, I have had that impression that there were a lot of
People going back-
visitors who
yes.
would bring new
Yes,
things to
yeah.
it. Oh, and Eugene Fitch and Alice, we didn't mention them.
Yes, I'm sorry. People they had cocktails together, they'd have dinner together, they would, but there were times when there were arguments about who, and it doesn't necessarily mean they,
Mhm.
but someone in New York, what the show looked like, somebody's gonna pan it, because, that's
Of
the way
course.
people are, they don't. So quite often you see I was an only child, so I sat and listened. And I had a great education in that sense. I read a lot, and Mother and Dad sort of took me around to places that perhaps children don't go to people's houses, to the theater in Boston. We would go listen to jazz at night in bars, and I was probably over 12.
Mm.
But we didn't do that very much, but Dad loved jazz. And so that's what we did. We did.
So then you went away and you came back to Brewster.
Yes. Oh, I came back almost every weekend.
Oh,
It
okay.
wasn't as if I was away. But it was good for me because I became more self-sufficient. Because really, my parents were very, very strong-minded, and I just I was very quiet.
Mm.
And but I came into my own, I guess, when I went away to school.
I was going to ask you how you felt about the difference between Brewster as you first knew it and Brewster today. But I don't want to completely ignore the plays either. So maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
The plays. The only one that I ever was involved in was Alice.
Okay.
Mother wrote the script. She was the queen. A young man who was a Saul lived with Tom and Diane during the summer, and he was the caterpillar. There were a lot of young college people from Dennis who were involved, and I really don't remember that. But we practiced all summer, every day. And finally, I think we only had 4 plays, 4 nights. We did it, and that was it. but it was to raise money for
Yep.
the library.
And how big an audience did you have? Okay, look, it was
It was
done
very
at-
dark,
It was done at the Bouchard's house.
Yes,
Are you acting out in the garden?
both at the top, and then you'd walk down.
So where's
Into the garden.
Where's the audience?
The audience is to the side,
Oh, the side of the garden,
the side of the house,
the side of the house.
before you go down.
Okay.
So I would say probably 35 or 40 people.
Each night, probably.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
And you made all the costumes?
Yes, but I wasn't involved.
No, no.
I think probably Diane Bouchard was, but she did a lot of the directing.
Yeah.
So I really don't know who did it. Alice Fitch probably helped.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, there was one play a summer, and there were maybe 5 plays.
mhm. The Shakespeare, Hamlet.
They did King Lear, they did Midsummer Night, I think.
Okay.
I've forgotten the others.
But I was about 12
Yeah.
when I did Alice, and I had long blonde hair. And I honestly was not involved with
Yeah.
the other ones.
That's
I was,
right.
getting up there.
That's
and
right.
Being, beginning to see other people, etc.
We do have a little more time here, so let me try this. What changes have you seen in Brewster then and now? I mean, some obvious ones, but just impressions you have of the town.
Well, of course, it's much bigger. Nobody knows anybody anymore.
Yeah.
I would think that there probably is a schism between the old Brewsterites and then coming in. I know I heard from someone who, well, never mind, I'm not going to say that.
Well, don't tell me who it is, but I would like to know the sentiment.
Well, it's just that, Mimi told me that everybody knows everything about history, but none of it's true.
That's why we're doing this.
Because they'll come up and say, so-and-so lived in that house and blah, 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 and so-and-so never lived in that house at all. And she would get quite perturbed. And I can understand why, I don't come to Brewster that much.
You live in Dennis now.
Mm-hmm. And it's the town I grew up in, but of course it's changed, and I really no one knows me anymore. For instance, I've never met you, and you probably never heard of me. So I play sort of low-key at Brewster.
Yeah. Do you know many people? You said that you get together with school friends.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there are people still around. There are people you knew.
These are mostly Orleans.
Oh, they live in Orleans
Yeah.
now?
Can't think of anybody who is in Brewster from my class. I think they
Were
all
these
left.
high school friends then, or were they?
They were high school friends.
Okay, so they never did live in Brewster?
No.
Okay.
So, but Brewster's a lovely town. That you've done very, very well with the zoning. And it looks pretty much the same as when I grew up. So that's really nice, except I miss the camaraderie.
Yeah. When you grew up, there were not so many trees. Is that true?
I suppose so.
But you don't have a sense of that?
No.
Okay.
No. I remember Miss Gervais at the town, where you got gas. She was wonderful, and she, every time you got gas, put her foot right on the dashboard and leaned on the car and talked. She was great, but Dad would say, "Oh, Lord God." So
It was a Texaco station?
I don't
You
remember. But she was marvelous. She had quite the stories to tell. And
Oh, we should have talked to her.
she would have been wonderful. So,
Nobody has talked to us about Donald Doan.
really,
Yeah, I mean, the story's been mentioned in some of these interviews. What was he like?
because I knew him as a kid. He ran the store. He obviously was interested in old things.
Mm-hmm.
He had a sense of humor, but it was sort of a dry sense of humor. And he was running the store when I
Yeah.
was growing up. So, I never got to know him on
Yeah.
a personal basis. That'd be too bad if you must be able to find somebody.
Yeah, there'll be somebody.
I don't know if Howard Eldridge is still around. They lived on 124. He worked there, and so,
Oh, really?
but I'm not sure if he's still alive.
Good person to know. Okay, good.
Okay.
This has been such fun.
Well, I
I
loved
knew it was going to be fun, but this has been
Well, I
wonderful.
hope I answered all the questions that you want to know.
I'm sure there are many more that we didn't come up with, but thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.